Uduka, a 45-year-old subsistence farmer, lived in a small village in Africa, surrounded by dense forest and rolling hills. He resided in a mud-walled hut with a thatched roof, which he shared with his 16-year-old daughter, Amara. Uduka's wife, Adoma, had passed away 3 years prior due to complications from childbirth, leaving him to care for Amara alone. Uduka's life was a constant struggle. He worked tirelessly on his farm, but the soil was poor, and the rains were unpredictable. He barely earned enough to feed himself and Amara, let alone provide for her education and future. Despite his best efforts, Uduka felt like he was failing his daughter. One day, while walking in the forest, Uduka stumbled upon an ancient ritual site. The site was hidden deep within the forest, and the villagers avoided it, fearing the evil spirits that dwelled there. Uduka, however, was drawn to the site, feeling an eerie connection to the ancient rituals that had taken place there. As Uduka explored the site, he discovered a series of cryptic symbols etched into the trees. The symbols seemed to hold a hidden power, and Uduka felt an overwhelming sense of temptation. He became convinced that the symbols held the key to unlocking a prosperous future for himself and Amara. Over the next few weeks, Uduka returned to the ritual site repeatedly, studying the symbols and trying to decipher their meaning. He became increasingly obsessed with the symbols, spending every waking moment thinking about them. As Uduka's obsession grew, he began to neglect his farm and his daughter. Amara, who had always been a bright and cheerful girl, began to worry about her father's behavior. She tried to talk to him, but he pushed her away, telling her that he was working on a plan to secure their future. One fateful night, Uduka finally cracked the code of the symbols. He discovered that the symbols were part of an ancient ritual, one that promised unimaginable wealth and power to those who performed it. But there was a terrible catch: the ritual required a human sacrifice, and Uduka knew that he had to choose between his own life and that of his beloved daughter. In a moment of madness, Uduka decided to sacrifice Amara. He convinced himself that it was the only way to secure a prosperous future for himself and his community. He spent the next few days preparing for the ritual, gathering the necessary materials and performing the required chants and incantations. On the night of the ritual, Uduka led Amara deep into the forest, telling her that they were going on a special journey together. Amara, trusting her father completely, followed him without question. As they reached the ritual site, Uduka's heart began to pound in his chest. He knew that he was about to commit a terrible crime, but he felt powerless to stop himself. With a heavy heart, he performed the ritual, and Amara disappeared into thin air. At first, nothing seemed to happen. But as the days turned into weeks, Uduka began to notice strange occurrences around him. His farm began to flourish, and his crops grew stronger and healthier than ever before. People from all over the village began to take notice of Uduka's newfound prosperity, and they would often visit him to ask for loans or favors. Uduka, reveling in his newfound status, would oblige, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He began to experience strange and terrifying visions, and he would often wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat. As the months went by, Uduka's wealth continued to grow, but so did his guilt and paranoia. He became isolated and alone, unable to shake the feeling that he had made a terrible mistake. It wasn't until the villagers, suspicious of Uduka's sudden wealth, decided to investigate that the truth finally began to unravel. They searched his farm and his hut, but they couldn't find any evidence of wrongdoing. Just as they were about to give up, they stumbled upon a hidden journal belonging to Uduka. The journal detailed his obsession with the symbols, his decision to perform the ritual, and his role in Ama's disappearance. The villagers were horrified, and they quickly reported their findings to the authorities. Uduka was arrested and charged with Amara's murder. As Uduka sat in his cell, awaiting trial, he couldn't help but think about the terrible mistake he had made. He realized that his desire for wealth and power had consumed him, and he had lost sight of what truly mattered. The trial was a sensational one, with the whole village turning out to witness the proceedings. Uduka was found guilty of Amara's murder and sentenced to life in prison. As he sat in his cell, Uduka would often think about Amara and the terrible fate that had befallen her. He would wonder what she would have become if he had not been so blinded by his desire for wealth and power. The story of Uduka and Amora would become a cautionary tale, told and retold throughout the village, a reminder of the dangers of greed and the importance of holding dear the things that truly matter in life. Years later, the villagers would whisper about the cursed wealth that Uduka had acquired, how it had brought him nothing but misery and suffering. They would speak of Amora, the bright and beautiful girl who had been taken from them too soon, and how her memory lived on as a reminder of the devastating consequences of Uduka's actions. The forest, once a place of beauty and wonder, became a place of darkness and fear, a reminder of the terrible secrets that it held. The villagers would avoid it, fearing the evil spirits that dwelled there. Uduka, meanwhile, would spend the rest of his days in prison, haunted by the ghost of his beloved daughter and the terrible mistake that he had made. He would become a shadow of his former self, a broken and defeated man, tormented by the consequences of his own greed. The story of Uduka and Amora would serve as a reminder to the villagers of the importance of living a simple and honest life, free from the corrupting influence of greed and ambition. It would be a cautionary tale, told and retold for generations to come, a reminder of the devastating consequences of allowing desire and ambition to consume us.